Good morning. Welcome into 104.5 The Zone. Lovely to have you guys here. Hope you enjoyed maybe an extra day off if you're somebody who got the holiday. If not, we're happy to have you back live and in person. 615-737-1045. That's how you join. Lucas, at some point, Bert, myself, Mike Wilson of the Knoxville News Sentinel, because Tennessee kept their College World Series hopes alive. We'll have Mike here in just about 15 minutes, yes?
That's right. Chase Burns, 6 scoreless innings to send the Vols to Tuesday.
All right, so we continue to, Tuesday to tonight, you mean?
6 o'clock tonight against LSU. We will have it, the Vol Network call right here on The Zone after 3HL.
There it is. You can hear that, as Lucas mentioned, right here on these very radio waves. Meanwhile, we are going to also get into some DeAndre Hopkins stuff off the top here. And many of you are asking, do you think we're being self-involved by saying many of you are asking for a Bonnaroo update? I do feel like people are invested.
I do think you use that phrase when 1 to 2 people ask.
Yeah, but that lets me do what I want. As long as 1 or 2 people
I'm not knocking it.
say okay, then it lets us do that. But no, people were very concerned about us, I think, generally, our well-being throughout the course of the weekend. People were providing or asking for updates and, making sure that we were all okay to return. Because how was it phrased by a longtime listener, Gary? I feel like Gary, who tweets the show at least 3 times a day.
Oh, right.
Gary had phrased it in a way.
Yeah, I got to pull this up.
That I don't remember off the top of my head. It probably would have been good planning and preparation for the radio show to have the tweet in front of me.
Yeah, Gary Todd, who listens to the show and tweets us all the time, which we appreciate, tweeted us on Sunday morning when we were rolling out on our way to Bonnaroo, and he said, I'm praying, tagged you, me, and Robert. He said, I'm praying that you 3 survive Bonnaroo so my local Nashville sports talk doesn't get, quote, improved by adding, quote, seasoned pros. He says, have fun, be safe. Bert, Lucas, throw Buck in the Paramore pit for me and get video.
I wanted in. I wanted to go further.
So, yes. God forbid that this time slot gets improved with, quote, unquote, seasoned pros. We definitely don't want that.
What would you do?
We'd have nowhere to turn.
Oh, my goodness. Anyway, we'll get to that later on. We do have a little bit of Hopkins stuff, and, this is what it's going to be all summer. You'll get a trickle of news here, a splattering of information there, and it'll be enough to sustain you like an oasis in the NFL desert. But this is courtesy of our buddy Mike Giardi, and we'll have, I'm sure, Michael on at some point this week to talk about the latest with DeAndre Hopkins. We're also, and once I get more information on times and days for you specifically as to when our guests will join us, we're going to have Diana and Mike on the show to get into a lot of the Hopkins stuff. But Mike tweeted this yesterday afternoon. Circled back on the DeAndre Hopkins sweepstakes, he put in parentheses question mark. Is this a sweepstakes?
If it involves 2 or more teams, then yes, I think it is.
Okay.
And it does.
Sweepstakes it is. Source with knowledge of the situation hammered home, quote, there is no rush to make a decision, that there could be more out there in the coming weeks' start of training camp, citing possibly a team unhappy with their wide receiver room or an injury. Source added that Hopkins liked his meeting with the Patriots, but also had similar feelings about his trip to Nashville to sit with Vrabel and the Titans. They each offer something unique to Hopkins. Both teams told Hopkins he still has elite capabilities. So, it's a very long tweet. How shall I translate it? The easiest. He liked the Patriots and the Titans fine. He wasn't blown away. There was nothing there on one side or the other that made him feel definitively that he had to choose one of those teams. And we knew that that was the most likely scenario. We've been talking about this, right? It was never just going to be 2 teams that were in on this. Nobody wants to be the first one with a contract offer out there because nobody wants to get basically, nobody wants to bid against themselves by being out there first with contract terms for him to just turn around to another team. So at this point, it continues to be in a holding pattern, but that the Patriots and the Titans, the visits were fine. Now, I think the thing that you have to be prepared for, And this is something that we have a degree of responsibility, I think, too, as people who are going to be tasked with talking about this until something happens, because that's basically the only thing out there that's going to change in the next 6 weeks is whether DeAndre Hopkins signs or not. I think the thing that we have to prepare people for is, yeah, you might go through all of this. He might have taken his first visit here, and there's a pretty high percentage chance that he doesn't end up with the Tennessee Titans. Now, I'm not saying that's because they did anything wrong or because something was mismanaged. Now, maybe you would say that if there was any circumstance presented where he didn't sign with the Titans, you would hold the organization responsible for not doing enough, not going above and beyond, not going to be able to make everybody happy. But, like, if you go through all of this, if he visited and ended up signing with another team, how do you think people are going to react to that? Maybe it'll go on for so long that at a certain point you're just like, all right, enough already, because this very much has the makings of that Clowney 2020, where it just continued to drag on and on and on, and ultimately the Titans ended up landing the player that Titans fans wanted them to land. And it felt like, okay, maybe they've got enough juice to put together a pass rush that can give them a chance. They've got this offense that looks like it's got something. It turned out to be the best offense that they've had in the history of the Titans era. And the defense, the thing that Clowney was heralded to potentially fix, or even better, put over the top. The defense was as bad a defense as we've seen from this team and from almost any, literally from any NFL team on third down specifically. For
in
those
2020.
Yeah, Mark safe from the 2020 season. Now, how big did that blow up? Now, he only played 8 games. But that has a similar kind of like timeline where Clowney was in no rush. The COVID thing complicated it. The fact that teams couldn't have him physically in person for physicals and visits, I think, further complicated. So it's not like they're totally equal, but it does feel like the timeline might be the same. It just might end up with you not getting the thing that you wanted at the end, the way that the Clowney deal did.
Now, Hopkins probably would be in this situation regardless of what was put in front of him, right, between the Titans or the Patriots. Let's say the Patriots put the Odell Beckham number in front of him. Said 1 year, $15 million. He probably would still be taking his time on this, right?
I think he would be pleasantly surprised and be like, oh, the next offer is going to be even better.
Exactly. So it feels like in any scenario, this is where we would be here.
Yes.
He's gathering information. It wouldn't make sense for him to just sign with someone now. He wouldn't have all the information. It
would make little sense from a business standpoint. And there's also, we'll play for you an Albert Breer clip here in towards the noon hour is when we're planning on getting back into the Titans wide receiver room and kind of the vibe check. How do you feel about it now as opposed to as you did prior to the offseason beginning? Did we change that tweet, by the way?
What tweet?
Did you not see the tweet that the off mic laughter always there for me when I least want it? Have you looked at the polls lately?
Stay tuned to find out.
No. It's not time for a break yet. You haven't yet gotten in my ear.
That is.
No.
It literally is.
3, 2, 1.
Now it is.
Welcome back to the show. Mike Wilson of the Knoxville News Sentinel is going to join us here in just a moment. The Vols, they stay alive last night. They get to continue their College World Series journey. Tonight at 6 p.m., we'll have coverage for you right here on 104.5 The Zone. You can hear all of that starting at 6 p.m. tonight after 3HL concludes. Mike has been in Omaha. I'm told there are Applebee's in Omaha. That was something he angered the people of Hattiesburg, Mississippi with upon his last travel for Tennessee baseball, covering them so far in postseason play. Mike, have you made it to an Applebee's in Omaha just yet?
No, but I did check the map. There's like 5 or 6 of them in Omaha, so it's a much better equipped city for hosting an event. But I will say it's cute. They did a Hattiesburg tribute here because one of those Applebee's is permanently closed, just like the one in Hattiesburg.
Oh, so there is an Applebee's in Hattiesburg. It's just not operating.
No, it is now Raising Cane's. So it has significantly upgraded also in what it is. But it's just the principle that a city that cannot sustain something as basic as an Applebee's just doesn't seem properly equipped to host an event.
I cannot imagine how many people you have had agree with you on the principle of what they are for, which was that Tennessee should not have had to travel to Hattiesburg. Instead, they should have hosted the Super Regional, only because you've taken up the fight against the lack of Applebee's in Hattiesburg, Mississippi. How many people have joined your cause just because you're making a different argument than they are, but you're both on the same side?
It gets referenced to me far more than I ever would have expected because the reality is I'd like to think I'm kind of funny, like at least at points. Not consistently, of course. I'm not Grant Ramey, who is hilarious. But I think I'm funny. For the record, my own mother thinks Grant Ramey is funnier than I am, and that hurts. But
those are always humbling moments.
Yeah. The Applebee's joke wasn't even that funny. It was just me being a brat about the fact I was going to have to drive 7.5 hours to Hattiesburg and joking about Applebee's. I was out of protest going to eat only at Applebee's and I didn't even have one. It was just all a joke anyway, but it wasn't even funny, but took off anyway.
Well, listen, people, it's been 5 years and people are still asking me when Malcolm Butler is coming off injured reserve. So, we'll go through these things together. Either way, Tennessee continues their College World Series hopes tonight. They stayed alive last night with a couple of days ago with a 6-4 comeback win against Stanford yesterday. I got my dates all kind of mixed up. We went to Bonnaroo this weekend, Mike, and I'm having a hard time putting it back together. Either way, Chase Burns was electric. What did you make of the way that Tennessee managed to survive and now try to continue to advance?
Yeah, man, don't take a 4-0 lead on Tennessee in an elimination game. I think it's probably the warning there. Southern Miss and Stanford both learned that one. Yeah, it was an interesting game because Tennessee came out so flat. I mean, you could see in the first inning Chase Dolander just did not have it. Slider wasn't accurate. It was flat. Missing his spots with his fastballs. You're kind of like, well, you needed a good Chase Dolander probably today against Quinn Matthews. Tennessee squandered a couple early opportunities, but, man, the back 6 innings there, Chase Burns delivered an absolutely incredible pitching performance again. Keeps kind of raising the bar. He's had so many good ones from that Vanderbilt one to start. Obviously, Clemson, Southern Miss last weekend, but this to me was probably the best one. I mean, 9 Ks, 2 hits in 6 innings, no walks, no runs, in a no margin for error moment. He was incredible. But what the offense did, I thought too, in the 5th was really encouraging. A lot of different guys, a lot of singles, weren't reliant on the home run. So just overall, I thought an encouraging win for Tennessee, and probably feels good for Tony Vitello and the program to just get that win in Omaha. I mean, even if you bow out now, at least you can come here and win. And so next time you're here, you've got that going for you.
As Mike wrote yesterday on knoxnews.com, that's where you can check him out. @ByMikeWilson is where you can follow him. It was Tennessee's first win in Omaha since 2001, snapping a 6-game losing streak. So Stanford now the only team in Tennessee's side of the bracket that has been eliminated. It will be an opportunity for Tennessee tonight to take on LSU and try and keep this thing alive. How can they avoid the circumstance that saw them fall in the first game against the Tigers 6-3?
Well, for starters, they don't have to face Paul Skeens. That's probably the most important part of this matchup. But no, I think Tennessee's bracket has fallen pretty much exactly how I expected it would going into this. LSU with Paul Skeens is going to win game one. It's a tough draw for Tennessee to get the best pitcher in the country off the jump there, and that's what they got. I expect them to beat Stanford. They've done that. And now Tennessee has a really nice situation on their hands. They have Drew Beam. Drew Beam is maybe the best Game 3 starter in the whole country. LSU doesn't really have a Game 3 starter. They're probably going to start Riley Cooper, reliever, who might go 3-ish, 4-ish if his pitch count's low enough, and if he doesn't get into trouble. But LSU's pitching staff is so thin. I mean, they've got Skeens, they've got Ty Floyd, who you saw yesterday, who pitched very well against Wake. They used Thatcher Hurd, who saved the bullpen by pitching the rest of that game. But Tennessee's pitching advantage in this game is now tremendous. I expect Tennessee to beat LSU tonight. And then obviously you've got Wake Forest, who's the best team in the country, loaded up with their pitching ready to go. Ideally for Tennessee, if you win tonight, you get 7 out of Beam. Can kind of hold some of that bullpen, maybe start Seth Halverson against Wake Forest in the game tomorrow. And then you've probably got Lindsey and Dolander available if you can beat Wake Forest in that first one. So there's still some pitching depth there for Tennessee that's nice.
Mike Wilson of the Knoxville News-Sentinel is here with us talking Vols baseball on 104.5 The Zone.
So, Mike, he hasn't pitched since Saturday against Tennessee. There is no doubt in your mind whatsoever that LSU, with their back against the wall, will not put out Paul Skeens today.
I mean, he's certainly not going to start. The guy threw 120 pitches a few days ago. Jay Johnson said last night we've got 9 pitchers available. Now, I'm no math whiz, but that didn't sound like it includes Paul Skeens. Maybe if you're in a tight spot late, he can throw an inning for you. But 120 pitches and coming back that fast is quick for a guy who's not used to doing that. So at the least, Tennessee's not going to see him for 120 pitches again, like they did the other night. But to me, I would be a bit surprised to see him at all, honestly.
So they struggle against LSU in the regular season. They lose the first game in Omaha to LSU, and yet you feel confident about them against the Tigers tonight.
Well, they did beat LSU in Game 3 in Baton Rouge. They won 14-7, and they scored, I think, 10 runs in the first 2 innings. And I think Beam was actually pretty okay in that game. I think he gave up 6 runs, but only one of them was earned. I don't remember what the error was in that moment, but Tennessee had quite a few errors early in the season, so that's kind of back in the memory at this point. There were a lot of them. I just think Drew Beam, to me, has been Tennessee's probably most reliable starter for the past month. He was tremendous, obviously, at Southern Miss. He's turned in 3 straight quality starts, and that includes at South Carolina, so he did it on the road. And he did it in 2 neutral site games, which early in the year he wasn't great on the road, but he has been away from Lindsey Nelson lately. And to me, it's the command of his curveball and the way he's been pitching. I would take Tennessee against just about anyone in a Game 3 scenario here because of Drew Beam. Jay Johnson, LSU's coach, said it last night. He's one of the best pitchers in the country, and that just speaks to what Tennessee's got. He's their 3rd starter.
At by Mike Wilson is where you follow him for coverage of the Vols in Omaha, their game to avoid elimination tonight against LSU, 6 p.m. local time. You can hear that right here on 104.5 The Zone. How much do you enjoy Omaha specifically as a trip? Like, the environment the College World Series creates is excellent. Omaha as a city, it seems like the thing, if not one of the things that they do the best. What do you most enjoy about being there?
Well, for starters, I think it's the best put-on major event that I've been to. Out of Final Fours, college football playoffs, I mean, it's just beautifully set up and organized. I mean, it's also a city that's been doing it for so long. It's just ingrained. Like, everything is smooth. Everything's well-run. From a media perspective, it's flawless. I mean, the elevator down takes you basically right to post-game. Parking's right next to the entrance. Everything's beautiful. But Omaha just kind of thrives. It's a really neat environment, and I'm a baseball junkie. So just seeing the volume of fans and the interest. I mean, the game last night between Wake and LSU was phenomenal. It's a packed house there last night throughout the whole thing. There's just so many baseball fans here, so much good baseball played. There's just a really, really good event. Personally, I'm a fan of spending all my money on T-shirts in Omaha. It's a wild habit I now have after my 2nd trip here, where I've bought like 5 T-shirts from like Baseballism and all the other stores that are here because I just really enjoy this event so much.
Yeah, but it's not like the Masters. Like, you can order that stuff online. You don't need to go crazy while you're there.
You see, you'd think that, but I'm here and I'm going crazy. So
It's all right.
I can speak to the opposite.
No, for whatever reason, Lucas and Robert took me to Bonnaroo this weekend. I decided that I'm going to be a festival person now, and I kept trying to buy concert T-shirts in every place that we got to. By the time Sunday of the last day, everything was sold out.
He was looking for a place to give him dreads, Mike. We needed intervention already.
Buck, we need to talk, man.
No, you need to come with me to Bonnaroo.
Were you wearing the shoes that you wore to Madison's birthday last year?
No, those were not. I thought about wearing something like that, and you know what? I didn't. I decided to go practical. We survived.
That would have been a great Bonnaroo outfit. That shirt, those shoes. I mean, you would have fit right in.
Well, listen. We are trying to get this thing off the ground. I'm now going to try and speak it into existence that we're going to do shows from there next year. I don't know how we're going to accomplish that, but now that I've set it into a microphone, I can start publicly pressuring people. Either way, there will be opportunity for me to embarrass myself both physically and in terms of what I'm wearing at Bonnaroo next year. So you're welcome to join.
Accountability is a tough thing, Buck, and now I think you have it.
Something like that. @by Mike Wilson. Get out of here.
Thank you, guys. See ya.
That's Mike Wilson of the Knoxville News Sentinel. Let's talk about this, shall we? I always thought that the first moment that I peed in a trough would be a moment that I would regret.
Oh, my God. You're going to start with that?
For the rest of my life. But it was the culmination, Lucas, of a religious experience that you allowed Bert and I to be a part of this weekend. And I wanted to thank you for taking me to a place where I got to pee in a trough.
You are very welcome. You're very welcome. But is it exhausting to have that mentality of every time something has to drag you beneath a porcelain toilet or a gold toilet, whatever you feel like you deserve in a place like Bonnaroo, and to just, I mean, come on, man. It's okay. You're out there. You're out in a farm, acres of space. There are no gold toilets for you to go to.
I wouldn't sit on the ground with the rest of you.
You would not. You wouldn't even sit on the ground.
I didn't want to sit on the ground. Robert kept pointing things out to me that were on the ground. It made me not want to sit on the ground. I went 15 hours standing just so I wouldn't sit on the ground. It's okay. It is exhausting. Sometimes it is physically not good for my body, like standing for 16 hours, and I'll do it anyway. But I had a great time. That was unbelievable. Unbelievable. I came in here. Bert greeted me at the door this morning. I actually greeted Bert. I said hello. Walking into work this morning because I was in such a good mood. I was singing Paramore.
You're radiating positivity.
I am in a wonderful mood. He said, I've never seen you this happy. I said, it's because you haven't ruined my day yet.
Still time.
Plenty of time.
This is such, you want to talk about well put on events? Everything. And listen, the conditions on Sunday, I can't speak for the people that camp. I can't speak for what it's like to be out there Thursday to Sunday. And there were walking corpses by the time the four of us got out there to go see the final acts on day 4. But everything from logistics, getting in and out of there, to the experience once you're in, to the way that they have it set up to make sure that people have facilities and water and all these different things, the food, everything. Bonnaroo is one of the best events I've ever been to in my life. I had as much fun Sunday as I have at any other point, honestly.
The weather was incredible.
And I mean, perfect.
Yeah, it couldn't have been better.
Perfect. And literally as we were leaving and before we almost all died on the car ride home, I'll get to you in a second.
Yeah, why you just go throw me under the bus that quick?
Not yet. You tried to throw us under a literal bus.
No.
Forgive me if I try to throw you under a metaphorical one.
Go back to talking about how great the food was and the lines were short and the weather was great.
Yeah, man wanted to get a little shut-eye on the ride home, right? Who can blame him?
That's
not about
fine
me.
if he wasn't driving.
Haley Williams was great. She looked incredible.
It's a little power nap.
It was, and that's not even the music. The music was awesome. I don't know, how the other acts were. I don't know how Kendrick Lamar was earlier in the weekend. It sounded like people had rave reviews. 3 6 Mafia apparently put on a great show. I know Jelly Roll was out there with them. A bunch of different artists, all different kinds of music on the various stages that they've got set up around there. But, the day we went for, it was, I'm unreal. Paramore, man. I don't know what everybody was looking at and most interested in when Lucas asked us about buying tickets to go to this thing with him and Megan. But as soon as I saw Paramore, I'm like, okay, I've never seen them live. I hear incredible things. That is the thing. Foo Fighters are awesome. The Revivalists, they've got a few bangers. They're a great jam band. It was good. It was cool to kind of hang out. We all went to Franz Ferdinand. They made us wait for the Take Me Out. They finally hit it. Payoff was worth it. But Paramore was the thing that I saw on that rundown. I was like, all right, that's the thing that I want to see. And for me to have it built up that way in my head and for it to exceed it by leaps and bounds, I don't know how it could have been better.
Yeah.
It's hard for me to say that, like, they eclipsed the Foo Fighters. The Foo Fighters also put on an awesome show. Truly awesome show.
Yeah.
But
They always do.
It was hard for me to not look around and say, man, but I wish that Paramore would have been the one closing, because that had me the entire hour and a half that they were out there. I can't say enough good things about the experience that we had this week, and now I'm going to shut up and let the rest of you talk.
Okay, so you want to talk about the I feel like we talked about all the good things. So you wanted to get into the bad things?
Well, I figured since I'm in a good mood and there's nothing that I can, like, outwardly bitch about, I said better to do the positivity thing. You know why? Because all the Bonnaroo people were nothing but nice. Nothing but lovely. It feels terrible for me to come in here after going to their weekend and then, finding something to pick apart like Dave Grohl's daughter.
Oh, man. I get it was Father's Day. Look.
What are you eating?
I'm not eating anything. What do you mean?
What did you just choke down that I could physically hear going down your throat?
So anyway, Dave Grohl's daughter. It's Father's Day. He's up here and he teases us by saying, hey, I've got a great singer. I love being able to perform in front of you guys because I get to say stuff like this. I'm now going to be joined by my daughter.
Yes.
And it was like a build-up. I was like, oh, who did Dave get for us, man? We get a surprise guest. And they came out and they sang Shame. And that was a great one song. Mm-hmm. And then they sang an original that no one in the audience or this planet, anybody besides those two, have ever heard. And it was a song for their grandma and mom.
Yes.
And it was bad. God, it was so bad. At no point all weekend did I think, how long have we been here? How long is this show going on? I looked at my phone multiple times during that song going, all right, man, how many stanzas of Who Will Teach
that was
Me
the
Now?
Moment. That was the moment that I looked over at Lucas and Megan, hoping that they might be ready to leave a little early.
That was a halfway
mark.
But
they were clearly vibing out, so I figured, all right, I'm not going to be the bad guy this time and demand that everybody else leave early because they're clearly enjoying this. I was like, okay. But yeah, it was a lovely moment. I'm sure it hit with everybody who has children. The three of us, Lucas, as a music aficionado, seemed to appreciate it and literally shamed us both for having anything negative to say about the Dave Grohl.
You think Dave Grohl's daughter, who doesn't even look like she's graduated high school yet, this
Correct.
poor girl maybe just got her driver's license. I'm not sure how old she is, but
you have no idea.
You are upset that you believe she overstayed her welcome on that stage.
Yes.
In what was a very special moment between father and daughter.
I'm certain. If I had kids, it would probably mean more to me. I don't. I didn't.
Okay.
Didn't. I wanted it done.
You know why it's okay? A, because he's Dave Grohl, and he can do whatever he wants.
Yep.
And B, because the Foo Fighters blew past their time. They were supposed to be done at 11. They played until 11:30.
Yep.
So they gave us what we wanted. It's not like she was taking away from our Foo Fighters time.
it was the second closest I came to falling asleep all night.
The first being the drive home at the wheel.
All right, look, before Buck, I'm going to set a precedent real quick.
Wait, before you do that, I need to lay some things out.
That's what I'm doing.
No.
Let me lay them out.
There need to be ground rules before you get to your ground rules, okay? Because Lucas just said, recklessly, I might add, into the microphone that Robert fell asleep on the drive home.
I did not.
People might assume that was because Robert was under the influence of things.
We did not. I had one beer the entire time.
Dead sober, yes.
That's what I'm saying.
That's just an exhausting day.
Which is why I wanted to get out in front of that before we went any further.
Fair.
Okay, Bert.
Yes.
I did not fall asleep driving home. One could perhaps be convinced that I dozed off for a couple seconds. But okay, so here's what happened. We're leaving the event First, we cannot find my car because technology is not what you would expect in a 2023 Ford Bronco.
Yeah, the range of your horn to activate your horn from your key fob is very, very small.
We walked around forever. Finally, we get back in my car. I'm fighting people to get out of this parking lot. It's like pulling teeth to get out, where I'm having to scream at the car to let me out. Like, hey, my mom is in that car. I have to follow her. Let me out. That's my mom.
It worked the first time, and then the next 6 times he did it, people were like, "That's not your mom."
That's a guy driving. So we're on our way home. They do not let us take the conventional easy exit onto the highway. We have to go through a corn maze of Manchester to get back around. So by the time we were on the road for an hour before we ever got back to the highway.
We were in Chattanooga. We were closer by proximity to Chattanooga than we were to Nashville by the time we started heading back to Nashville.
We finally get on the highway. Lucas and Megan are slumped, passed out in the back seat. I'd have been doing the same thing. I turned on Howard Stern because that's my road music, and something happened. I don't know. Buck kept trying to talk to me about something. My lane assist kept like beep 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 beep. I was trying to get a little shut eye. I thought Buck would do the neighborly thing and grab the steering wheel and drive.
Yeah, just put it in cruise control and just let Buck.
We're on a smooth 65. Buck could have handled that.
I would have rather done that. I offered to do that 6 different times, and then you would jar yourself awake, slap yourself in the side of the neck, say how dumb you thought this person Robin was, and then continue on your path forward. I don't know who Robin is. That was my introduction to her and Howard Stern.
You never listened to Stern?
No.
Stern's like
Robin
partner.
Quivers. She is not my favorite person on the show. But I digress. Robin, if you're hearing this, retire.
She's not.
Oh, God, don't get me started. Anyway, Buck kept yammering on, asking me about my life.
To keep you awake?
You keep saying that you offered or you asked me to pull over so you could drive. I don't remember that.
You were asleep.
I don't remember that part. I remember getting to Lucas's house, seeing Buck run to his car to get out of that car with us, and I got home and I fell asleep, stinky feet and all, right there on the couch.
I took a shower at 3:30 in the morning.
Yeah, I mean, we were out there for like 14 hours, whatever it was.
Yes.
But great day. Haley Williams, one of the best performers I have ever seen in my life.
A bona
Absolutely
fide
unbelievable.
Rock star.
Yes, and can't wait to go back.
So we can do this, right? Like we can find a way to publicly pressure people into letting us go back to Bonnaroo as a function
We
of this
can find
job.
a way. And the one-day pass was great. I've done the camping thing. I know you would not last on it.
No.
You're doing this thing now where you're Bonnaroo and you're a festival guy, but if you went out there for one night camping, you'd be like, take me home. I hate this. This is terrible.
Take me home tonight.
I didn't even almost make it through the first day because by the thing that started to turn
Yes.
my mood sour was Dave Grohl and his daughter.
I have camped once at Bonnaroo before. It was great. It was fun, but the one-day pass was a good move yesterday, or on Sunday. Get in, get out. Had a great day.
When we are there next year, we all have to dress up like the festival people. Because they were rocking some costumes, dude. And I think that we could.
If they were wearing clothes, yes. The ones that were wearing clothes.
There was a
Buck
lot
would
of
not let us stand next to any of the nudes. Any of the nudists that were in the crowd, Buck was steering us away from.
Well, they were typically the dirtiest.
Yeah, well, I mean, they don't have any clothes on. What do you expect, man? They pay taxes, too. There ain't nothing wrong with that.
You don't know that they pay taxes. In fact, I'm quite certain that many of them don't. And that's okay. It's their weekend. We were visitors. What did they call us? Galactic, what was the thing that the parking lot was called?
Cosmic Nomads.
Cosmic Nomads.
Cosmic Nomads park here.
We are simply cosmic nomads, and if the nudes want to continue to be nude and disgusting and dirty, then we will let them do so, but I will have 6 to 10 feet between them and me. We will get into, speaking of things that make you say, oh no, what in sports made you say, oh no? We'll do that coming up next. 615-737-1045. That's how you jump in. What in sports made you say, oh no, this weekend? Did you hear that? It was because I forgot to turn the volume off on my laptop. I'm getting worse about that. That and getting dyslexic about names. This is how I'm going to age. You ready? May cause you to jump ship, or may help you get this job faster than you might have otherwise gotten it.
As much fun as we had on Sunday, and it was, I do wish the Revivalists had played this song.
Oh, no! Oh, no! Oh, no! Oh, no! Oh, no!
Oh, no.
Oh, yeah!
Revivalists were great. What in sports made you say, oh, no, this weekend? 615-737-1045 for the opportunity to win what, Lucas?
A chance to see Walker Hayes, speaking of Applebee's, at Ascend Amphitheater this Friday, 615-737-1045, if you give us the best oh no of the sports weekend.
That's how you get it done. I would like to start the bidding with a late submission that did fall into our laps. There is a lot of conversation today about Dalvin Cook. Dalvin Cook, who did an interview with Adam Schefter's podcast yesterday, who got aggregated because it's a slow news time about how much fun it would be to team up with DeAndre Hopkins. That was the headline around Dalvin Cook until about an hour ago, when Pro Football Talk tweeted, Dalvin Cook was sued in November 2021 for allegations of domestic battery and more. In response, he sued his accuser and her lawyers, and he has been quietly securing some key preliminary victories in court. The way that this has gone down, it looked like a situation for Dalvin Cook where the findings of this might have been hugely detrimental. But what has happened for Dalvin Cook since then, in one of the ways that you've seen. So, for example, Matt, how do I pronounce the punter's last name from the Bills that went through a situation where he was accused? Araiza? He was accused of some very, very serious stuff. He ended up going through the legal process. He ended up suffering a lot of financial loss, a lot of public shame, only to be found that he was not found guilty of the things that he had been accused of. So Dalvin Cook has apparently fought back pretty aggressively against his accuser and her lawyers at this point, and has been having plenty of success. I just think all of these things can get so complicated, and some of the details around this are really, really difficult situations. I just don't know, anytime something like this happens, and, you want to believe the accuser, but you understand that there's a legal process that has to play out through all of this, and so you cannot immediately have that impact your opinions of, in this case, Dalvin Cook, or the one of the bigger notably cases of this, Matt Araiza. Just the whole thing is an oh no for me. I saw this and I just struggle with how to talk about it on sports talk radio when there's so many different ways that things like this get picked apart, and when people get dragged publicly, especially when you're the party who has far more financial assets with which to do the dragging.
Speaking of legal trouble, did you see this news about Patriots cornerback Jack Jones over the weekend?
I sure did.
This is my oh no of the sports weekend, because Jack Jones on Friday was arrested for alleged gun possession after trying to bring 2 firearms onto a plane at Logan Airport in Boston, Massachusetts. This is from NESN. The 25-year-old, who is facing several charges, including possession of a concealed weapon in a security area of an airport and unlawful possession of a firearm, is likely to be arraigned today. Jeff Howe of The Athletic went on to some Boston radio and explained that the organization is livid over the situation. They've broken up minicamp. Jack Jones expected to play a major role for the New England Patriots this year.
Projected as a starter.
In the secondary, he's a second-year player for that franchise. So, yes, I am sure Bill Belichick and company are livid over this situation. But here's why it's my oh no of the sports weekend. I'll take you back about a month on May 15th, 2023, when Jack Jones decided to chime in on the Ja Morant situation. Obviously, Ja Morant will be suspended 25 games by the NBA for his behavior on social media with guns in public places in states where it is legal, states where it isn't legal. Anyway, Jack Jones tweeted on May 15th, At John Morant, dumb, ... You're letting social media and your pride ruin your real money. Put them guns down and run that money up. Make one of your homies sign up for security or concealed carry if you feel like you need it that bad. But you're the breadwinner. You got to start acting like it.
Sage advice.
Very sage advice, Jack Jones, that you probably should have taken yourself before bringing 2 guns onto an airplane, or at least trying to.
That's TikTok worthy. 615-737-1045. What in sports made you say, oh no, this weekend? We'll get to yours for the opportunity to win some Walker Hayes tickets coming up next.
It is 11:01. Good morning from the Superbook.com sports desk. I'm Lucas Panzica. Tennessee stayed alive in the College World Series on Monday, rallying from down 4-0 against Stanford to win 6-4. Chase Burns coming in and tossing 6 scoreless innings as Stanford is eliminated. Vols take on LSU tonight in an elimination game. The Tigers fell to top-seeded Wake Forest on Monday. First pitch is at 6 p.m. Drew Beam likely gets the start on the mound for Tennessee. This is the second matchup between the two teams in Omaha. LSU defeated Tennessee 6-3 on Saturday. You can hear the Vol Network broadcast right here on The Zone, again, starting at 6 p.m. Starting at 1 today, TCU and Oral Roberts will go head-to-head in an elimination matchup. All is quiet on the DeAndre Hopkins front after visiting the Titans and Patriots over the course of the last 2 weeks. Mike Giardi reporting that Hopkins is in no rush to make a decision and would be happy to wait until training camp. For all your foundation repair and waterproofing needs, visit USSTN.com. Breaking news at once on your home for the Titans and Vols. This is 104.5 The Zone.
Second hour underway. Welcome into 104.5 The Zone. Thanks for hanging out with us. 615-737-1045. That's how you jump in. We'll get some phone calls on the thing in sports that made you say, oh no, this weekend here in just a minute for the opportunity. Win some Walker Hayes tickets. We have more giveaways this week, yeah? We've got things for the dumbest thing in sports. We've got a pair of tickets to the bowling event coming up on July the 13th at Kings Bowl in Franklin. If you haven't got your tickets, certainly you can go to 1045thezone.com and purchase some today. All proceeds going to benefit Home Street Home, an incredible charity helping the homeless community here in Nashville. But if you haven't purchased your tickets yet, fortunately, the station was kind enough to purchase some and donate them to giveaway to the audience. We will be giving some of those away tomorrow. Meanwhile, there is some news with Tennessee football. A new hire has been made. Some details on that Lucas was just telling me about in the commercial break. Lucas, what can you tell people at this time?
Josh Heupel building out his staff of analysts as Tennessee's expected to hire, according to Matt Zenitz of On3 Sports, Corey Robinson, who has experience as a defensive backs coach at both the NFL and college level. Robinson worked for the New Orleans Saints the last 3 years. He was the assistant defensive backs coach for the New Orleans Saints, working with the likes of Alontae Taylor, former Tennessee cornerback, now playing in New Orleans. So Josh Heupel building out his off-the-field staff, so to speak.
Yeah, he was a coach at the Senior Bowl. Saints sent him down
Robinson?
Here. Yeah. He was down there to coach defensive backs at the Senior Bowl this year for the American team. So he obviously is well thought of in the NFL at this point, and now we'll get an opportunity to continue and try and better his coaching career prospects by joining the University of Tennessee staff.
He was the passing game coordinator and cornerbacks coach at Rutgers in 2018. He coached cornerbacks at Toledo and Temple. He has coached at Maryland. So, yeah, back in the college ranks.
615-737-1045. What in sports made you say, oh, no, this weekend? Let's go to Chuck in Clarksville first. Hey, Chuck.
Hey, Buck. Well, Lucas kind of stole my thunder with Jack Jones, but I got another one for you. My oh no would be Deion Sanders. When asked if he did go back and coach the Dallas Cowboys, he said no. He said, I like the family there, but I don't want to coach a bunch of guys that don't want to work. Now, for one, I don't think he's going to get invited to be a motivational speaker for the NFL. And two, I think it's the same guy when he was in Atlanta playing football. He got questioned about his work ethic, and he told bunch of fans, just go back to work. Don't worry about it. I'm good. I'm fine. So that Deion Sanders would be my oh no of the week. And Lucas, if you don't schedule an interview with Robin anytime in the near future, I think you got to lose a little bit of your manhood.
Oh, you're talking about Robin from Howard Stern? That
yeah,
Robert is.
Yeah,
that Robert was decrying.
Should we do that? Should we schedule an interview just for Robin and Robert?
Robin and Robert.
Sounds like a podcast or a sports talk morning show.
Yeah, I'm guessing Robin would want nothing to do with that.
I think that would be a fair guess. Seems like a lovely lady based on the hour of replayed 1986 Stern interview that I was listening to while trying to keep Bert awake in the car. Unreal. Did you see this headline on Deion, though? From, I think it was Sunday.
No, I missed that.
Is when this came out. So this is the quote. I'm cut a little different. I love Jerry Jones. I tremendously love that whole family, while adding that he has no desire to ever coach for the Cowboys or in the NFL. So that's the second part. Coach the Cowboys or in the NFL. Now, you may read that headline and kind of snort or scoff and say, well, nobody's asking Deion Sanders to coach in the NFL. And I don't know that that's something that's completely out of the realm of possibility. I also think that people looked at Deion Sanders as a college coach and kind of turned their noses up, and all of a sudden he's turned a program that was nothing into the most talked about college football program in the country. Whether that's sustainable or not, different question.
Without having coached a game.
Correct. Correct. So what he said of dealing with players in the NFL, I don't have any desire or ambition to coach in the NFL. I'm cut a little different. I love Jerry Jones. I tremendously love that whole family. I have a problem with men getting their checks and not doing their jobs. I would be too tough as a coach in the NFL because I still have those old school attributes. That I've referenced it a couple times. We didn't play it on the radio show yet. Things got, away from us last week, and there wasn't necessarily a space for it. But this Bussin' with the Boys clip of them talking about Vic Beasley, how he's talking about cashing or chilling and collecting was the approach to the 2020 season that he spent with the Titans. A dude literally there just to cash his check and try and do as little as humanly possible.
Which everything we saw plays into that, right?
Correct.
Looked like he was just there to pick up a check.
That's correct. And so the idea of that, Deion's going to get some heat for it, but Deion's sitting there trying to tell you how people, there's an attitude among a certain segment of players. I'm sure most people are hard workers and you could look at any profession this way. There's plenty of people in your job that are coasting. They're just coasting. Just going through their day-to-day, getting their paycheck, and moving on with their lives. And the idea that would exist in professional athletics is something that may seem counterintuitive to us, but yeah, it turns out there's a lot of people who once they reach a certain point, they're good too. They're just chilling. So I think Deion, speaking of that, people can turn it around on Deion if they want to, but it can also be true. Bobby in Nashville is next. Hey, Bobby.
Hey, Buck. My oh-no from the weekend was the Tennessee batters trying to hit Paul Skeens Saturday night. The dude was throwing triple-digit gas all night, unhittable almost.
Yeah, that is why it is probably best-case scenario that Tennessee gets LSU tonight rather than Wake Forest, because you eliminate the possibility of having to face Paul Skeens down the road. If, say, Wake Forest had lost that game and Tennessee would, A, be playing the number one overall seed in Omaha tonight, and they would have the potential that if they do survive that, you play LSU in the Final Four, so to speak, and have to face Paul Skeens again. So, yes, Tennessee was able to make that a ball game late. They got the tying run to the plate, but ultimately lose 6-3, and I don't know who's going to be able to touch Paul Skeens for the rest of this tournament, and Tennessee fans should be thankful that they do not see him tonight. Mike Wilson mentioned that I guess there is technically the possibility that they would throw him out there if they absolutely needed to, but he certainly wouldn't have a full game in him. So, yes, that played out pretty well into Tennessee's hands.
So the fastest pitch that he threw against Tennessee was 102. All right, he gave up 2 runs on 5 hits, 12 strikeouts, 1 walk in 7.2 innings of work. The first 7 pitches of the College World Series for him, 100, 100, 100, 100, 101, 101, 102.
Yeah. I mean, you're talking about probably the number 1 pick in the draft.
The guy is unreal. I mean, I saw a comment in the F&M Bank chat earlier that said, if you're scared of this Skeens guy, you're not really a champion. And while I think that I understand the comment, you can do that by degrees. You don't have to be scared of him, right? You can respect him. And the abilities of this dude are worthy of respect. Now, maybe the common man or woman or whomever, the common fan, might look at that and say, yeah, that's a scary dude. I want to see him again.
I would love
that's
to
how
ask,
I would feel.
I'd love to ask Tony Vitello about this. You know, you think Tony would be like, no, we want to see Skeens again. I bet you Tony would come on here and say, no, hell no. I'm glad we're not seeing that guy tonight. I'm good. I want to win. Yeah.
I'm all set. That you can respect him without fearing him and also be like, yeah, I'm all set.
I've
already
not
done that.
Would you rather play the best pitcher in the country and probably lose or not and probably win? I'm going to take the second one.
One would think.
People are asking in the FNM Bank chat if we will air the Vols game tonight. Yes, at 6 p.m., the Vol Network broadcast will be on the Zone.
Indeed. Jason in Murfreesboro is next. Hey, Jason.
Hey, guys. I wanted to touch on some soccer. You got DC United versus Real Salt Lake, and if I'm not mistaken, I think it was Real Salt Lake that the goalie missed the kick. It was like a 60-yard kick. That's my own note for the week.
So I think he's talking about just an absolute wonder goal from midfield from over the weekend, scored by Real Salt Lake. I believe, Pablo Ruiz scored from basically inside his own half. He caught DC's keeper off his line and just boomed it from 60 yards out.
Shut the hell up. Are you kidding me?
And that thing drifted into the top right corner, upper 90, just absolutely immaculate.
Oh,
one of the
God.
best goals you will have ever seen. Speaking of that, Hani Mukhtar, man, another hat trick on Saturday. He is the second fastest player in MLS history to register 4 career hat tricks. And I bet he's probably not done. I mean, you keep coming up with numbers to show what this guy is doing, and he just keeps joining elite company in MLS history, and Nashville's just on an absolute roll.
You didn't have that game on Saturday, did you?
No, Will had that game with Jaleel. Will and I will have the game tomorrow when they head to Montreal trying to extend this 10-game unbeaten run.
Okay. You can hear that right here on 104.5 The Zone. Nashville SC on an absolute heater. Hani Mukhtar, unbelievable player, and Nashville certainly grateful, I think, to have him. I think that's one of the biggest reasons that soccer is going to be able to stick and continue the way that it does, because they've got a legit star.
Oh, yeah.
Got a legit star.
Best player in the league last year, probably the year before that, and this year, 1,000%. So, it is unbelievable what he's doing.
All right, one more, and then we will let Lucas decide who gets the Walker Hayes tickets for the thing in sports that made you say, oh, no. Eric is next. Hey, Eric.
Hey, guys. I'm going to disqualify myself because I'm not going to be able to go, but I think I got a good one, guys. My old no is Chris Paul finding out that he was traded from the Phoenix Suns to Washington Wizards by text from his son while he was on the plane. I mean, that's one of the worst things that can happen to you, to find out that you traded from your own son. He said that yesterday on Good Morning America. Guys, that's pretty bad. That's my own no. Y'all take care of it. Talk to you soon.
I hadn't even seen this story. I honestly had no idea until he just said that Chris Paul had been traded.
Yeah, he got traded to Washington. He found out on the plane on the way to New York for he was doing a Good Morning America interview in person.
No.
Yeah, so they were asking him about it on the interview because he was like, yeah, I just found out.
Oh, my God. It's tough. It's tough. Seriously. It is part of the business, and what you realize is that no one owes you anything, no matter how you are with them or what you do. You realize that in this business, nobody owes you anything, as it should be. When it comes through and my son texts me and I realize that, Matt and Isaiah, I guess, just wanted to go in a different direction. Woof. I had no idea that happened, much less that it happened that way.
Yeah, but the reporting is that nobody really thinks he's going to be a Washington Wizard this year. Brian Windhorst of ESPN is talking about another trade where the Wizards are looking to offload Paul and send him to a contender for something. He's probably not going to be a Washington Wizard.
Still.
Clippers, Lakers have been brought up.
To go back to the Clippers after all that. 615-737-1045 is how you join the conversation. We never really put a bow on the Titans offseason. We're going to do that coming up next, and also get into a fascinating conversation about the running back dilemma. There's a lot of running backs in two situations, two categories that we're going to put them in. The guys who are just piling up, names that you know, famous names who have had success in the NFL that are piling up as free agents in the offseason, and a collection of dudes who is out here in this offseason trying to negotiate on behalf of the running backs. We're going to talk about the running back conundrum next. So the Titans concluded the offseason last week. We are officially in the NFL's dead period. About 6 weeks to go until training camp. Then, we can get this thing back up and running again. But in the meantime, what do you feel like you learned? It could be about a position group, a player, a coach, new or in a different role, depending on how you look at the way that they shuffled things around in the coaching staff and in the organization this year. It may be a situation where you know less about the players or the collection of players of this team at this point than you did when the offseason started. I would think that would be fairly difficult to do, but given all the unknowns that are going to be factored in, all the new parts and different pieces and different places, yeah, there's a lot of unknowns going around at this point. So we asked Tannehill this when we talked to him last. I think that was on last Wednesday, when the thing ultimately concluded. So Ryan Tannehill was asked specifically about where he felt they made improvements in the spring. This was the Titans starting quarterback.
I've seen a lot of improvement, just coming out. Like I said, last time I was up here, just new offense, working through a new terminology, new concepts, and everyone just getting on the same page with that. I've just seen a lot of growth. We were able to work through some of those early mistakes, early miscommunications, and just being on the same page. And you've just seen those mistakes decrease as time has gone on here. So really, really happy with the way our guys have worked. Seen a lot of progress out of our younger guys and some of the veteran guys as well. So, really proud of the way we came out, worked with a purpose throughout this spring, and feel like we got a lot better.
So that's Ryan Tannehill speaking from his standpoint. There's only so many things that he can say or is going to be willing to say, but I think I can speak to based on the amount of practice. Again, it's a smaller sample size than the number of practices that he and his teammates participated in. But of the, let's say, 4 OTAs, 1 rookie minicamp practice, and 3 days of mandatory minicamp that I saw, I think I can confirm that they're in a comfortable place as an offense in particular.
And there would probably be more of an adjustment in an offseason program like this one with a new offensive coordinator and a new system than there would any other year where you're just carrying over.
Agreed. Because I think the thing that people assumed, and I don't know that we ever talked about it in these terms, but I almost kind of had this in the back of my head too. I assumed there would be more carryover from last year's offense, to be completely honest with you. Not necessarily in how it looked, how it's called, and maybe I should rephrase. I expected some carryover in how it looks, and I still think that that's probably going to be the case given the personnel. But that does not mean that this is not a new system and that the process of putting that together is more ground up than I might have realized. Just because it might look the same to you, whether that's from a formation standpoint or Derrick Henry's usage or the fact that it's still just generally going to be a run-heavy offensive football team. Just because it might look the same does not mean that the system itself is the same, and that the players and the coaches have not done a significant amount of work to try and make this into something different, make this into something better, which is, of course, ultimately the goal. They were putrid last year. I would say that it would be difficult for them to do worse, but I said that last when we were talking about injuries last year, and of course, they damn near matched the injuries from 2021 to 2022. So offensively, I think, one, that's reassuring to hear if you're a Titans fan, hearing that from your quarterback. 2, I think there's proof of concept of that for one big reason. And there's probably a variety of different reasons why that's so, or why Ryan Tannehill feels that's so. But for me, it comes back to one thing. Those skill players, you cannot underestimate how big a deal it is for them to not be rookies. Chig, Phillips, Burks. Those 3 players in particular. Now, you could throw Racey McMath into that equation if you want to, but let's stick with the primary actors in this. Who is the second best wide receiver on the Titans roster? Not by position, Like, I'm not talking about let me rephrase that. The second best wide receiver, who you would consider the second best wide receiver on the Titans roster, who is that to you?
Nick Westbrook-Akina? I mean,
yes is the answer. That's the answer to the question. Truly, but I think a lot of people are going to look at Kyle Phillips and say, no, that's the second best wide receiver if Treylon Burks goes down.
now, second best
Based on what? I don't know. But
wide receiver or second best pass catcher? Because I think Titans fans would have higher hopes for Chigakonkwo. Other than Treylon Burks, is there anybody in that room of receivers or tight ends that Titans fans have higher hopes for than Chigakonkwo?
No. But again, it's coming back to those three names, right? Chig, Burks, Phillips. Those three are going to be, for no other reason this year than they have to be. They didn't bring in anybody else, right? Those three are going to be looked at as three of the most important pieces on that side of the ball. How big a step they all three take within the system, and again, you cannot assume health, but they're healthy right now. The way that those players come through this and have a certain understanding of how things are going to go, how Ryan Tannehill likes to practice, how Rob Moore wants these drills executed, how to go through the daily planning and preparation of not just your physical, but your emotional, your mental, all the different things that you're just kind of feeling out during your rookie season, much less if that rookie season is basically robbed from you, as it was for, I would argue, two of the three.
But health plays into that too, right?
Sure.
Treylon Burks talked about that. He was better prepared for the offseason program this year than he was last year. Kyle Phillips is going into his second year where he is presumably trying to prepare his body better for the rigors of an NFL season after essentially being knocked out of it in week one.
Yep. There's things, because I think I caution people about this enough to where it probably sounds repetitive. I think the two hardest things to carry over on a football team that people assume: offensive line play and defense, just generally. Like, because you had a good defense in, let's just use 2022 as an example. I know they were the worst statistically passing defense. Like, I know they had their problems. But let's just say last year.
Defense kept them in games.
Defense kept them in games. Let's just assume that the Titans were a top 10 defense last year, all right? Let's put that hypothetical in your head. Just because you were a top 10 defense last year doesn't mean that you're going to be a top 10 defense in 2023, the following season. Doesn't mean that you're going to be a better defense, as a matter of fact. There are all kinds of things that can go wrong when you play on that side of the ball for as physical as the demands are of playing defense. Just the hitting. Offensive line, I feel the same way. Your body breaks down faster. It is more difficult to sustain. That's why you rarely see teams go on, have the best offensive line in the league year over year over year. Titans couldn't do it. Cowboys couldn't do it. Colts couldn't do it. All the recent examples of this. Those are two of the things that are most difficult to sustain. What is not difficult to carry over year, and that does have a tangible impact on how your team improves year over year, is the understanding of just what your daily schedule is going to be. The mastery of it. You may go through the NFL. You may say you're a quarterback, for example, and you last 10 years in the NFL. And while physically you may not be what you were when you were drafted into the NFL, you have a better understanding of defenses, you have a better understanding of scheme, you have a better understanding of teammates and coaches and how to work with them. You are a better, more well-rounded version of the player that was ultimately drafted into the NFL. The idea that Ryan Tannehill is going to have to do less hand-holding for Chig, for Phillips, for Burks matters hugely. And he'll still have to do it for the offensive line. It's a bunch of new pieces and parts. And we're going to get into a conversation about Tannehill later in the week because I thought Chris Sims of NBC, of course, former NFL quarterback, really gave a well-rounded argument, a well-constructed argument for why Ryan Tannehill is the least of the problems here. But I think having those three players not in their rookie season, all at the same time, that helps a ton to try and get this thing to be a more productive version of what they thought it might be when they put all these parts and pieces together.
Though they are undergoing a coordinator change for the first time in their NFL careers.
It's true. And ultimately, I think people are going to assume, yeah, the offense has to get better under Tim Kelly. Now, I would agree with that assessment. It has to get better under Tim Kelly. They cannot be a competitive football team with an offense that languished the way that last year's did. But it doesn't have to just by nature of the coordinator changing. Because Todd Downing is gone does not automatically assume that his successor in that role, Tim Kelly or otherwise, is immediately going to improve the offense. That's the hope. But if they're trying to find ways to do it, there are reasons to think that they might be able to succeed. Better grasp of how it is to handle the NFL, better knowledge, institutional knowledge of their teammates, the idea of playing faster, all these things, just time spent, stuff that you can't buy or pay for. That, I think, gets lost in the free agency discussion when you start talking about adding free agents to football teams. And it's always accounted for in some portion of the conversation. But I think the idea of just dropping a better skill player in there and assuming that is immediately going to make the Titans as an offense leaps and bounds better, i.e. DeAndre Hopkins, does not account for the time spent of these players who were brought into this organization organically, who have those valuable reps with the quarterback. But again, last year cost them valuable reps, both with the skill players missing time and Tannehill missing time. What you're looking for, ideally, who in the last 3 years, or 4 years, let's say, last 4 years, what was the one thing about the Titans offense, or there's not a good way for me to phrase this because people are going to say Derrick Henry. How I was going to go about this and say is, what was the thing that you could trust most about the Titans offense in the last 4 years? Derrick Henry is probably the answer that's going to be given most. The thing that's second, though, I think, watching them play with Ryan Tannehill as their starting quarterback, by year 3 together, there was no question to me that Ryan Tannehill and A.J. Brown, when they were out on the field together, were going to be on the same page. A.J. missed all that time leading into that Thursday night football game against the San Francisco 49ers. What happened? He got put back into the lineup. Him and Ryan Tannehill were right there together. You saw some amazing throws and some better catches made by a guy who maybe didn't outright win them the game, but was as big a part for them winning that game as any other player on the field. It turns out it's hard to recreate that. And that those valuable reps, time spent, you're going to have to go through this again when inevitably, whether it's the end of this season or into future seasons when Ryan Tannehill is no longer on the roster. You're going to have to do this again with Will Levis. But those things matter. Those things make it easier. And you're just looking for a way for it to not look so damn hard every time you trot out on the field as an offense. That, I think, is the kind of thing that you can start to see the groundwork laid for at this time of year. I can't tell you how good an offense they're going to be by the time we get to November based on a couple of weeks of voluntary work. But I can tell you that the thing that the quarterback is speaking to there is something that there's quantifiable evidence of, and those are the kind of things that pay dividends once you get to November, once you get to December, of course, provided that all those guys are out on the field. 615-737-1045 is how you join the discussion. Speaking of veteran wide receivers, there is one who is surrounded by controversy, and it's not the one that we've been spending all summer talking about so far. We're going to get into what's going on with Stefan Diggs and the Buffalo Bills coming up next. So I don't know if something's going wrong in Buffalo at this point because there seems to be mixed messages. So you had a report yesterday come out from Ben Volen of the Boston Globe. Now, Stefan Diggs, of course, Bills, Pro Bowl caliber, all pro caliber, I would say. One of the best wide receivers doing it right now with a quarterback. You want to talk about relationships that don't miss? Josh Allen and Stefan Diggs. The chemistry there is unreal on the field. But now there appears to be something going on, as Al Green sings. The drama there for the last, for about 24 hours last week, he's at practice, or he's in the building, but he's leaving the building before practice starts for mandatory minicamp. He's out there for day 2. His agent apparently is in Buffalo at the organization, at the facility, trying to work something out that's not contract related. The details on that are still unknown. So now Ben Volen has reported that Diggs' frustration is with his role in the offense and his voice in play calling. The situation had been hiding in plain sight since the 17-point playoff loss to the Bengals. That sound familiar? He gesticulated in frustration on the field, he being Diggs, gesticulated in frustration on the field late in the game. He stood before quarterback Josh Allen with arms spread and profanities flying. Diggs left the postgame locker room before meeting with reporters. So, Stefan Diggs is now saying that's made up because Lucas brought this up this morning, and I said, well, did you see Diggs is commenting on this publicly on Twitter? He's basically saying people are just making up details. Something is happening there. There's no reason that agent would be in Buffalo working through something that's non-contract related if there wasn't an issue. One would assume we'll get some details on whatever this drama is that's causing some form of infighting with the Buffalo locker room right now. But I think when you talk about these things, take, for example, Buffalo's last year, the Damar Hamlin situation, the exhaustion, the emotions of that, how big a toll that ultimately ended up playing and how their season ended up, you can't quantify it, right? But those things matter. They're human things that happen throughout the course of a football season that cannot be accounted for, but they happen and they have an impact. Whatever is happening there between Josh Allen, Stefan Diggs, and whether it's true or whether it's speculation at this point, a role in play calling and a role in the offense, there's going to be some impact, some ripple effect of that. And where it's felt, I can't tell you. I don't know if it's going to come up in training camp. It's going to bubble over. I don't know if this is as bad as it's going to get. I don't know if something is going to happen in week 4 where it happens on the sideline and people are starting to talk about this stuff again. But those things do matter. And I think it's normal for those kind of situations to present themselves, as I said, in any work environment, football team or otherwise. But I do think it's worth paying attention to.
Diggs had 10 or more targets in 7 of the Bills' first 11 games last year. Remember, they were just torching the NFL in the first half of their season. But in their last 7 games, including the postseason, he had 2 instances of having 10 or more targets in a game.
So if he's not getting used enough, that's a fair criticism.
He is getting, the regular season finale, a win against the Patriots, 10 targets, 7 catches, 104 yards, and a touchdown. Their opening playoff game, a win against the Dolphins, 9 targets, 7 catches, 114 yards. And then, yes, against the Bengals, 10 targets, only 4 catches, 35 yards, no touchdowns. So it's got to be more situational than that.
It's one of those things, though, that, like, the numbers make it seem like Stefan Diggs should be completely fine with his role.
He had a monster year. He had over 1,400 yards.
Right? I mean, there's nothing.
11 touchdowns.
There's nothing statistically, there's nothing counting stats-wise to indicate, for you to present a case, if you're Stefan Diggs, to go before the court of the Buffalo Bills and their offensive coaching staff and say, hey, here's what I got. Here's how I'm showing you that you didn't use me enough last year. Present those numbers, and they're going to look around at you like, what?
I mean, they're in a place where it's Super Bowl or bust, right?
Yes.
The Buffalo Bills.
And because he's no longer on an inexpensive deal. He's been playing on one of these top quarterback contracts for a couple years now. So it makes these things harder, especially when you are also paying the top flight wide receiver at the top of the market. Now, here's the thing, though. While it might seem rational to us that Stefan Diggs is being utilized fine within the offense, you think Stefan Diggs doesn't think that he can't do more? I know there was some double negative usage in there, so forgive my grammar, but you don't think that Stefan Diggs is looking around and saying, see what I did last year? I can do better than that. Throw me the ball more. Reinforcing what he thinks of himself rather than showing that as evidence that they're using him plenty. I can't get in Stefan Diggs' head and answer that question for him. But there's plenty of times when you look around and you're dealing with professional athletes or coaches, and the response that you get back is, yeah, they don't necessarily listen to reason all the time. It could be one of these things that causes a situation that Buffalo has to deal with for the coming up weeks, because I'm certain that Stefan Diggs is not somebody who's easy to move off a position if he feels a certain kind of way. So we'll keep an eye on this. It's probably the biggest story in the NFL beyond DeAndre Hopkins right now.
I think I'd say Dalvin Cook. I mean, we know where Stefan Diggs is going to be in 2023. What scenario could there possibly be of Stefan Diggs not being a Buffalo Bill this year? There are things that need to be resolved.
I mean, could there be a scenario that presents itself? Sure, because there's always something. But yeah, I understand your point.
Yeah, I think where Dalvin Cook goes is a bigger storyline. Obviously, D-Hop is running everything right now.
Yeah, Dalvin Cook, so...
Dalvin Cook, who wants to be teammates with DeAndre Hopkins this year.
And I think that's probably why Dalvin Cook is a bigger story, for example, than Saquon or than Zeke Elliott still being out there. Dalvin Cook's a free agent. Dalvin Cook is younger than the rest of those dudes, although it's not like Zeke is, 35. Zeke, I don't think, is Zeke 30? Zeke Elliott might not be 30 yet.
If not, he's really close.
He's got to be right around there. Anyway, Dalvin Cook.
27.
Ezekiel Elliott is only 27 years old.
Yeah, he'll turn 28 in July, in almost exactly a month.
God. That I'm looking forward to this running back conundrum conversation that we're going to have tomorrow for exactly that reason. Because I think it's going to shock people. Maybe not shock people because they've been out there for a couple of weeks now since teams have started to make cap casualties or create cap casualties and things of that nature. But, the fight that running backs are in for their future finances is not something that I can't find a single good reason why they should win. And that's really, really unfortunate for that position. Because it's not like running back is ever going to be removed from the NFL offense. But imagine coming up to somebody. I don't want to do this whole conversation now, but imagine coming up to somebody who wants to be a professional football player, a kid or, whether it's a teenager, a high schooler, or a college kid, whatever. And saying, okay, you have the talent, you have the skills, you have the ability to be the best of the best, the top 1% of your profession as a pro. But you're going to play the position that's least valuable, that has the least amount of lifespan, and that not only is the situation not improving for you, but it seems to be getting worse year over year. Go ahead. You want to play that position? Go get him, Tiger. That's the spot that running backs like Dalvin Cook are in right now. Because Dalvin Cook, Zeke Elliott, Leonard Fournette, these are all dudes who have had success in the NFL, and basically they're being told, nah, we're good. We'll figure it out. We don't need to pay you. There's no reason to. 615-737-1045 is the number. Now, Stefan Diggs, the wide receivers, and we didn't really see the corner market go crazy this year, the way that the wide receiver inflation last year, at least at the top of the market, drove the contracts all the way up. But is wide receiver more valuable, automatically, wide receiver more valuable than running back? Or has running back become such a blurred lines position that the running backs are trying to find additional value for themselves by doing what Eric Gray told us he was doing at the Senior Bowl, which is making sure that he understands that he showcases not only his ability to play as a running back, but to be a receiver, to be able to be left on the field in third down situations, to pass protect, all these different things.
I'm confused. You're asking if wide receiver is more valuable than the running back position?
Yeah, and I understand how that sounds because everybody would tell you that the answer is yes, but is not wide receiver the most positionally dependent position on a football field?
Yeah.
right? I mean, you can make the argument for tight end, but at least a tight end can block. Wide receivers can block, as evidence. But
everything is positionally dependent. The running back position is dependent on the offensive line,
right? But in most cases, most dependent. Wide receiver,
sure.
I think, based on the value of that would be taken into greater consideration, or at least that would be my argument. If you were a running back trying to argue against other positions being paid that much more than you, would you not look around and be like, well, the wide receiver needs somebody to throw on the ball? Then I have a worth a damn quarterback. You're paying $25 million a year for what?
Yeah, but there's an understanding that you're not going anywhere without a quarterback anyway.
Yeah.
And the quarterback can be as equally dependent as the wide receiver.
Now, listen, I'm not arguing for running backs. Again, the most wrong I've ever been is arguing against Derrick Henry getting a second contract.
Eric in the F&M Bank chat says, Sean McDermott fired after this year. What would it take for the pressure to be upped on Sean McDermott? Like, you feel like down in Dallas, right, if Mike McCarthy does not win a Super Bowl this year, every year with the Cowboys, if they don't win the Super Bowl, let's talk about if McCarthy's going to be back next year.
Yeah, but that was the same thing with Jason Garrett. That guy had every
It's a soap
offseason.
opera, but in Buffalo, I mean, it's very clear that it's Super Bowl or bust. That's where they are right now. I mean, they're paying Josh Allen. They're paying Stefan Diggs. The frustration's boiling over on the sideline after losing to Cincinnati in the playoffs. Does Sean McDermott, I mean, let's say the Bills don't reach the AFC Championship game this year. Like, is that a conversation then that has to be had about Buffalo?
So it's kind of like saying that Mike Vrabel should be in a. Now, as Sean McDermott hasn't won anything like Coach of the Year or anything like that. And maybe that's, an accolade that just sounds nice and doesn't actually mean anything. But it's almost like arguing that if the Titans don't, make another substantial playoff run, that Mike Vrabel should be in trouble. Or I guess you could have made that argument last year, right?
Okay, but how many years do the Buffalo Bills need to go into the season as Super Bowl favorites and not win the Super Bowl before Sean McDermott starts to feel that heat?
Yeah, because nobody's talking about the Titans as a Super Bowl favorite. I would say that Sean McDermott is probably safe, like without that being a discussion.
If anything, maybe Ken Dorsey, I don't know, the offensive coordinator.
Now, yeah, everybody hates their coordinators. It doesn't matter who you are, what fan base or what team you root for. Everybody hates their coordinators. So I bet the coordinator is the first to go on the chopping block. But if that does become a talking point, I don't think that happens this year. I do think that happens next year, though, if they continue to go through this without breaking through that, I don't want to call it a glass ceiling, but breaking through the ceiling that is the Chiefs. If you can't get by the Chiefs and the Bengals somehow feel like they're surpassing you because they're playing in more AFC Championship games than you are, then yeah, I think those conversations absolutely start around Sean McDermott. 615-737-1045 is how you join the discussion. The Vols, base Vols specifically, playing tonight in Omaha to keep their College World Series hopes alive. We're going to talk about Tennessee athletics, the state of it within the scope of what the baseball team is doing right now, what the football team seems like it might do, and where the rest of the athletic programs are as well. Final hour coming up next.
It is 12:02. Good afternoon from the Superbook.com Sports Desk. I'm Lucas Panzica. Tennessee still alive in the College World Series after rallying from down 4-0 against Stanford to win 6-4 and eliminate the Cardinal on Monday. The Vols now take on LSU tonight in an elimination game. Tigers fell to top-seeded Wake Forest on Monday. First pitch is at 6 p.m. Drew Beam likely gets the start on the mound for Tennessee. This is the second matchup between the two teams in Omaha. LSU defeated Tennessee 6-3 on Saturday. You can hear the Vol Network call right here on The Zone, again, starting at 6 o'clock. Coming up at 1 p.m., TCU and Oral Roberts will play an elimination game in Omaha. All is quiet on the DeAndre Hopkins front after visiting the Titans and Patriots over the course of the last 2 weeks. Mike Giardi reporting that Hopkins is in no rush to make a decision and would be happy to wait until training camp. For all your foundation repair and waterproofing needs, visit USSTN.com. Breaking news at once on your home for the Titans and Vols. This is 104.5 The Zone.
Final hour on this Tuesday. Welcome in. Welcome back. If you've been hanging out with us, we're happy to have you. Either way, Lucas and I until 1 o'clock, then we'll turn things over to Blaine and Mickey. 615-737-1045 is how you join. So, Vols play tonight. You heard Lucas in his update. Eliminated Stanford yesterday. An exciting comeback for Tennessee after a disappointing first opportunity against LSU. So to try and survive and advance tonight, of course, will be the theme. But it also gets into a discussion about, okay, obviously, baseball right now, a couple of games away from or has a couple of games to go to try and win a championship.
A win tonight would have put them in the Final Four of college baseball.
Right. So by nature of that, they are by actual proximity the closest to winning a championship at the University of Tennessee. Baseball has had success. You can talk about the baseball program within the terms of how far they've come under Tony Vitello, what the standard now is versus where basically the depths that they had to drag them out from under. But we understand that by proximity right now, because of the time of year it is, baseball very, very close to winning a championship. So when I ask you the question, which program at the University of Tennessee is closest to winning a championship? The answer, the only answer, the correct answer is baseball. But we have to have a larger discussion around this. If I gave you, so let's say, how many sports do we want to include in this? Because you're going to include all the revenue sports, football, basketball, baseball, Lady Vols, basketball.
And I think softball.
Softball deserves to be in that discussion, having just made a run through the Women's Softball College World Series as well.
Those are the sports people remember. Like, people aren't watching college softball on a week-to-week basis, but the Women's College World Series does pretty well, and people remember what happens there, especially fans of that program.
Is there any other varsity sport, not club sport, varsity sport that I'm leaving off that deserves mention outside of those five?
I mean, there's success in track and field, and you see those athletes that go on to greater heights and get to compete in the Olympics, and you can kind of hang your hat on that. But I think we just keep it with team sports, the things that people will talk about, because it's
team sports. As
successful as those can be, like, you can say, hey, remember when the Lady Vols won the Women's College World Series back in year X? But not many people are saying, remember when so-and-so won the 100-meter whatever?
Sounds like a shot at Will Bowling.
No disrespect to Will Bowlinger track. But it's just what people remember, right? I mean,
no, I'm with you. So let's say of the team sports, okay, those five. Where the programs are right now, under Tony Vitello, under Kelly Harper, under Josh Heupel, and on it goes, who do you feel best about the trajectory? Rick Barnes is probably going to be at the bottom of this list, even though Rick Barnes has a proven track record of success, is one of the best regular season coaches that you could find in men's college basketball. While Kelly Harper might not have the resume of Rick Barnes has a stigma around him from being in his career so long without the level of success that people associate great basketball coaches having in March.
Yet the level of expectation for those programs is very different. Like, I think Lady Vols fans have every right to bang their fist on the table and say if Tennessee women's basketball is not competing for national championships year in and year out, then we have to work until we find someone that can. Whereas on the men's side, I don't like hearing from Tennessee fans, gripes against Rick Barnes because he hasn't made the Final Four run. Like, I don't think Tennessee basketball is in any position to fire anybody because they haven't been to a Final Four when they're consistently turning out 20-plus win seasons, competing for and winning SEC titles, and making the tournament every year.
Correct. These programs have different expectations within the same university. There are championship expectations for the Lady Vols. There are champion expectations for the football team where they have had no business. None, basically, for 20 years. It's just really... You can't make that case, and yet people expect them to be able to compete at that level. So you are absolutely right in pointing out there's a difference between how Rick Barnes and the men's basketball program is going to be viewed versus how Kelly Harper and the women's program should be viewed. Do you think that people are still, and I don't want to phrase it incorrectly here because I know there's a passion for women's basketball in this state unlike almost any other, truly unlike almost any other. So I don't want to diminish that by saying, just because we don't hear from them a ton, that Lady Vols fans have lessened their expectations because it has been some time. Is there any sign or sense that that fervor, that expectation, that standard has dropped off a little bit? I don't know the answer to that question. I'm just asking it.
It probably has.
Okay.
Yeah, it probably has. I mean, the expectation...
In the way that it did not for the football program.
Yeah. Well, but it also did, from... The big picture expectation is that for football, Tennessee get back to winning championships year in and year out, right? But then when you zoom in and you get to the micro expectations, like in year 2 of Butch Jones, it was get to a bowl game.
Yeah.
In year 1 of Josh Heupel was in year 2 of Josh Heupel this past season, it was, all right, get to that 8-9 win mark.
Win 8 games.
And then make that jump. And he made that jump a little bit earlier, but now you start to get closer to now the expectation will actually be to compete for championships. And we could talk about Tennessee athletics as though it's in this golden age. I've heard that phrase tossed around a bit because every sport's doing something right now, right? Tennessee had both basketball programs in the Sweet 16, softball and baseball in the College World Series, football in a New Year's Six Bowl. The only program in the country that can say they did all of those things in one calendar year. But is it going to be a golden age that we're going to look back at if there's not championships to come out of it?
If one person cites a golden age at Tennessee, it's going to be 98 was really good.
Yeah, right? Exactly. And the basketball team was good. They won 20-plus games. The women's team won the national title, but the football team won the national championship. Golden age requires trophies, in my mind.
So the argument for golden age of Tennessee athletics, and again, I'm not the person to judge golden age. So I leave that largely in your guys' hands. But I think that when you look at where they are in terms of stability from program to program, women's basketball is in a healthy place. Football is in a healthy place. Baseball, healthy. Basketball, healthy. Softball, healthy. Team sports, they're checking literally all the boxes other than that greatest of box, which is rings, trophies, championship, record in the record books for your university until the end of time, right? You did that thing in 1998 or in, any other time that you would cite a championship moment. So would you sacrifice, I guess the question becomes, as a fan, would you sacrifice that stability to have one of these?
Sports?
Across sports, would you sacrifice the job that I don't think you can completely attribute to Danny White, but he has done well in presiding over what this currently looks like. It's still early.
He's sleeping well these days.
He's doing okay. He's got everything in a good position. Would you sacrifice that stability if it meant football, for example, won the championship next season?
Yes, I think most people would.
In a heartbeat.
I have had friends tell me that and they will preview this by saying, like, I love Tony V. I love watching our baseball team. They're so much fun, but I would disband the baseball program for a 10-win season. I have friends tell me that. So, yes, I think there are legions of Tennessee fans that would disband multiple programs in the university for a football championship, 1,000%.
So I think that's kind of the way. I think we almost have to readjust the way that we talk about Tennessee athletics, if that's the prism. And I don't know by percentage, right? Like, we could put it on a Twitter poll. That's not scientific. But, like, if we came back with some Pew Research or Marist polling, right, on what percentage of fans would have that opinion that they would disband multiple successful programs if it meant just the one championship.
Yeah. Which is just like a fantasy thing, right?
Sure.
That we just talk about as what ifs, but
I'm saying,
it's the priorities.
Like, if I'm going to sit here, for example, and talk to people about what they should be prioritizing in athletics when my judgment for what I'm prioritizing is different than the people who support this thing, who pour resources into this thing, who travel to games, who do all these things, right? If I'm saying, yeah, but wouldn't you want your 5 sports in a healthier spot, even if it didn't mean maybe you have an opportunity to win a championship in each of them, but I'm not guaranteeing you a championship, the vast majority of people are going to turn around and be like, yeah, but bleep that. Give me a football ring. You know what I'm saying? So should that change the way that we talk about Tennessee athletics? Because every time the basketball team does well, the baseball team does well, we bring it up. Am I supposed to turn around and say, yeah, but they didn't win in football this year? They didn't really win in football this year.
No. Because you can still simultaneously say the baseball team is the closest team right now to winning a national championship.
By proximity, yes.
Yes. And people will remember that. That is something people will look back on.
Correct.
With pride. So, yeah, you can do both. You can talk about what drives the bus. Football is the engine that drives everything in the University of Tennessee and most SEC programs. And you can also be in the moment here in the College World Series and be living and dying with every pitch tonight between Tennessee and LSU as the Vols try and take a step towards their first national championship in a major sport since 2007 with Pat Summitt.
I mean, it's the way that it works, at least in college anyway. Football's the thing that gets you in the tent, right? Things that get usually at you probably argue the vast majority of like major college institutions. Football's the thing that as a sports fan, as a fan of your school, football usually the thing that gets you in the door. And then if you're a fan of the baseball team or you're a fan of the Vols and the baseball team does well and you start to pick up on that thing and you start to enjoy it, maybe you go to a couple of games, now you're watching them on a consistent basis. Like, football might have got you in, but now you're a fan of the baseball team by relation of just because it's under your same university umbrella.
There's something to being relevant in every sport and something that keeps you coming back to every sport. When I was a freshman at Tennessee, Donnie Tyndall was the head basketball coach.
Oh, God.
Holly Warlick was the head women's basketball coach. And she had a moment, won an SEC title, but things flamed out very in a toxic manner there.
Did not end well.
Butch Jones is the head football coach. And the vibes were good around Tennessee football at the time. That obviously crashed and burned. And Dave Serrano was the head baseball coach. And the baseball team was terrible. They were the worst team in the SEC. It was like pulling teeth to watch any given game. So when I look at what it is now with Josh Heupel and Rick Barnes and Kelly Harper and Tony V and Karen Weekly with the softball, she's been there forever, there is something to that. That it just keeps you coming back. And Tennessee fans have something to be engaged with here on June 20th.
No, I know. That's why I think my opinion is going to skew from that. We can talk about Vols all year round. I love that. I'd rather have something local, something relevant, something that I can actually sink my teeth into rather than, listen, I'm going to talk a lot of DeAndre Hopkins over the summer. I would rather talk about something that's going on. I'm just going to be upfront and honest with you. The idea that the best update that I have for you on DeAndre Hopkins is that he's not in any rush, bleep that. You know what I'm saying? But I'm talking about that as somebody whose job it is to have these things. So I would rather have the thing that I can talk about, the team that's making a run, have it be under that same umbrella. I would prefer, even if they don't all end up in championships, I would prefer to have 5 relevant major programs that I can talk about year-round, that I can enjoy year-round. But I understand that most fans would sacrifice that year-round feel-good, that year-round relevance, just to get the one thing.
But you can still enjoy it.
Yes.
You can still enjoy it. And for us to remember this as a quote-unquote golden age of Tennessee athletics, got to be titles.
Need a ring.
Got to be titles won, and football's got to be a big part of that.
Would you describe this as a golden age for Titans wide receivers? Perhaps not. We will talk about how the vibe check is what it says in my rundown. How are the vibes at this point on June the 20th after the Titans offseason concluded, based on the vibes that you did have about the Titans wide receiver core heading into this offseason? We'll get into that coming up next. I mean, they made us wait every minute of that hour and a half to hear this song. But when it hit, it hit. It was cool. Franz Ferdinand, was that the first act that we saw?
Yeah, we walked right up to it. They played for an hour. And yeah, of course they're going to wait for this song.
No, I get it. I understand. And as soon as they did, the crowd, I mean, it didn't half, but there was definitely a substantial mass of humanity that started to move away from the witch stage at Bonnaroo.
They played one song after this one. Yeah.
And it was funny to watch because they've definitely made a career for this song came out, what, early 2000s? Like
I don't know.
They have absolutely made a 20-year career just stretching it out until they play Take Me Out. And a credit to them for doing that. Because
it's okay to be a one-hit wonder.
Oh, I mean, because the hit bangs. But of all the, of all the different, I almost said Paramore, all the different Bonnaroo acts that we saw, I didn't think we didn't see a bad show. Like there was some, I know Bert came in here and made jokes earlier about the lull that we had during the Foo Fighters concert because Dave Grohl had a really cool moment with his daughter on stage where they sung.
Not to Bert.
I mean, I am more with Bert than not with Bert because, like I said, I don't have kids. Father's Day is okay, great. I hope everybody had a great Father's Day. All these things, but like, doesn't matter to me. Play the song, play the hits. You know what I'm saying? I don't. I didn't quite pull the emotional strings that I imagine it did for most. But either way, can we hear? Can we? We only have one more break with music, right?
That's correct.
You got to play me a Paramore song, if you would, before we get out of here today. Meanwhile, vibe check. Vibes at Bonnaroo Immaculate. Vibes at St. Thomas Sports Park. I don't know. Not immaculate, not good, not necessarily bad by any stretch of the imagination, just kind of meh. So that's after an off season. And, you know, I mean, if there's no strong reactions or strong takeaways one way or the other, it's not a bad thing. It's just kind of a standard offseason that this team went through. But given the expectations that people had for them, let's take this back to end of February, right? Combine. End of February, early March. When Mike Vrabel and Rand Carthon are meeting with the media, really for the first, I mean, not for the first time, I guess, when Rand got hired, but like with the intent of construction of the 2023 Tennessee Titans, Combine is kind of the starting point. So had I asked a Titans fan, hey, how you feeling about this offseason? Heading into this offseason. Got a new general manager. You got clear needs at wide receiver, offensive line. You've got a situation where your quarterback and your running back are all on expiring contracts. You got a safety making $19 million. How you feel heading into your offseason? I think most people would have looked around and said, well, the guy who put us in the hole, or who most people are holding responsible for putting the Titans in the hole, John Robinson is no longer here. I don't necessarily think that's a fair assessment, by the way. I'm just saying that seemed to be the message that most Titans fans were running with. John Robinson's poor decision-making put the Titans behind the 8 ball, caused a house of cards effect that saw them lose 7 straight games. I don't think that's all John's fault, but I think a lot of people pin the blame on him. So, coming off of that, new season, no more Todd Downing, vibes high? Morale high? I don't know. What was the feeling? What was the general attitude of the Titans fan at the Combine, heading into the Combine, with the draft, with free agency, all these things ahead of us?
Well, the season's still fairly fresh, coming off a 7-game losing skid. Lose the opportunity to win the division and host a playoff game. The vibes were hopeful, right?
Hopeful. Okay, so not high, but hopeful. Vibes right now. Vibes on June the 20th as opposed to, I mean, when we were in Indianapolis, February 27th, 26th, whatever the dates on that were. Hopeful is not the word that I would use, although there's still a degree of hope because DeAndre Hopkins.
The vibes are TBD. How many Titans fans are hinging what their opinion is going to be going into this season on this team on what DeAndre Hopkins does?
Now? Oh, I would say almost all of them.
I would say the majority.
In some form or fashion.
Yes. I would say if DeAndre Hopkins signs, yes, let's do it. Ready to roll. Go in the AFC South. If he doesn't, not that.
I would say, though, that the vibe check, that morale is slightly lower now that we're in the summer as opposed to what it was in February. If I'm reading the room correctly, and you'll tell me if I'm being hyperbolic, if I'm being dramatic about any of this stuff, and you guys can as well. I don't want to speak for you on this, but the general sense that I get from Titans fans is that they are emotionally in a worse place now than they were at the Combine, because the moves that have been made, I would not underwhelmed seems to be the general tenor of what I've gotten back because of the wide receiver decision, because you're still waiting around for that solution that may or may not be DeAndre Hopkins, and how much of your feelings are going to be caught up in the idea of, well, okay, it's either you do or you don't land this guy. Jeff Simmons kind of felt like the first hurdle that way, where if they didn't sign Jeff, if they didn't get this contract extension done prior to the season, Titans fans were going to look at Rand Carthon a hell of a lot differently. Rand Carthon has obviously bought himself a little bit of runway, but are people just going to immediately turn around if he doesn't land DeAndre Hopkins and bury him for it, even after they got the Jeff deal done? I think when you hear the players talk about it, I don't know if this changes your perspective or not, but this was Ryan Tannehill talking about timing with the wide receivers, because that at the core of everything is where the angst this offseason is coming from. The position of wide receiver and the lack of additions, meaningful additions, according to the fan base that have been made there. Let's hear from Ryan Tannehill on what it's been like to get the timing down with the receivers that he's currently working with.
Yeah, I think just getting on the same page, it's something we don't do a lot of, especially first balls to a moving, receiver, running a go ball. He doesn't really always come out perfectly, but we had some read route, a version of a read route where the angle is going to be dependent on the coverage. One of them I didn't do a good job of explaining the full look to Chris, just being on the same page there. But we're growing through that. I think those got better as we got a little settled in there after the first couple on the go balls, and we're seeing some good balls and some good catches.
So much turnover on the offensive line.
So those kind of growing pains that he's describing after one particular practice, was that after last Wednesday or was that earlier in the offseason?
That was from the final day of OTAs.
Okay, so last Wednesday. So those growing pains, regardless of whether you added, if Chris Moore was going to be your wide receiver addition, or if DeAndre Hopkins ends up being, or if they drafted one of the wide receivers that you wanted to draft and they didn't, like that's going to be the line either way. They're going to have to work the kinks out. But the moves made at that position have not been, I think, regarded as satisfactory by most people. And you're dealing with a lot more unknown at the position that you thought was the easiest one to address of any that they had to address this offseason. Wide receiver, wide receiver, wide receiver. Draft a wide receiver, sign a wide receiver, get better wide receivers. Offensive line, same deal. I don't know how Titans fans are feeling with 6 weeks to go, with some time to think about it. Maybe you're putting this team entirely out of your mind whatsoever. Yes, just saying it's 6 weeks. Let me be in peace. Don't make me think about the lack of moves that the wide receivers have made, or that they've made at the wide receiver. Don't make me think about the idea that just because they've swapped out a bunch of names for a bunch of different names on the offensive line, that it might not be that much better. I just always think it's interesting to do these kind of vibe check or, temperature test type of things pre-season and after things like the draft, things like free agency, all the different roster construction stuff and how that's actually applicable. I'm sure it's going to be interesting to do again when we reach the bye week, kind of look around. Although it sounds like you're going to be me most of the bye week.
Or even preseason and then post-preseason.
Yeah.
The course of training camp. How many opinions changed throughout the course of training camp? Not just fans, right? Us being out there and seeing what we're seeing. Like the way we talked about Racey McMath in last year's training camp. And I know he didn't have a lot of opportunity to translate that with the injury, but
it really only ended up being like a week and a half of good racing.
He got back. Oh, you're talking about at training camp?
Like total. It didn't really, like when you go back and think about it, really wasn't that big of a sample size.
Sure,
but it was something.
But there are things that you take from training camp that do translate. We don't know if that would have translated. Racy got hurt. He was injured up until that Thursday night game, right? Wasn't that the game he came back against Dallas?
Mm-hmm.
It was, what, second to last, third to last game of the year, whatever that was?
Second to last.
But Kyle Phillips, in that connection with Ryan Tannehill, that was very real throughout the course of training camp. That did translate in week one, and then it didn't because he was injured. So who's going to be that guy?
Well, I think it was, I want to make sure I give proper credit. I want to say it was Kaharski that wrote an article like in October. The idea of lies we told ourselves during training camp, right? And I really enjoyed it because one of the premises, or it was built around things like Kyle Phillips that we saw in training camp. Ryan Tannehill likes Kyle Phillips. That's hitting. We saw evidence of that happening in game one. Then we saw it completely disappear because his shoulder must have caved in on itself for how little he could contribute beyond the Giants game.
Yes, I don't know that that's a lie we told ourselves.
Okay, but Austin Hooper felt like a lie that we told ourselves, right?
Caleb Farley was a lie that we told. That was
Caleb Farley was the most.
To me, that was the number one.
Okay, but think about it in that context, right? On a scale of things that we knew to be certain in training camp that were almost completely not applicable by the time we got to the regular season. Racey McMath breakout, Austin Hooper, Ryan Tannehill, surefire connection. Caleb Farley has a role on this team. I don't know that there were bigger lies that we told ourselves than that, and they're going to happen again this year.
And the lies evolve. I mean, at the start of training camp, Radens is working as the right tackle.
Yes.
Right? Dylan Radens probably going to be the right tackle for this team. Didn't take long for that to go the other way.
That happened very quickly.
Yeah.
We'll do this. We do this a couple of times a year, and I'm always interested to see kind of where you guys are and how you go about that, or even if you go about processing it even remotely in the same way that we do.
Eric on the F&M Bank chat says, no vote of confidence in the wide receiver room currently.
None whatsoever.
None for Eric.
So the idea that Treylon Burks is physically better than he's ever been, that he's going through almost an entire NFL offseason. I mean, he did go through an entire NFL offseason without issue. In ways that were not the case very much last year. I don't know how many hours I spent talking about an asthmatic wide receiver that I just haven't even brought up but the once.
No, all the talk on Burks has been positive from players and coaches.
And it's just
in the
talk.
Offseason.
Doesn't mean anything. Talk may not be enough to buy you any confidence in what this group has to offer. The endorsement of the coaching staff in the front office by nature of not really adding a ton. I mean, minimally adding. They're basically the same wide receiver group. It's just Chris Moore instead of Robert Woods. What's the difference? Colton Dowd, I'm not counting that on the active roster until I see that he's going to make the active roster. They're the same wide receiver group. So the coaching staff in the front office, the new head of the front office, just gave what must be a ringing endorsement for what's already there. That may not be enough to convince you, but certainly somebody seems to believe in them.
Tyler on the F&M Bank chat seems to believe. He says, I can't believe we are completely ignoring the fact that Chig and Burks together are going to ball out.
I'm not completely ignoring it. There's just no proof of concept. You can sell me the idea of it, and I'm willing to buy that it's a great idea.
I do love that concept. I can't believe we're ignoring the fact that this is going to happen in the future, probably.
But don't you see? I can see it so clearly in my dreams. When I close my eyes at night, there they are.
Mossing everybody.
Yeah, they might. Sure. I have zero evidence to the effect that either of those two will even be above average NFL players, much less that they're going to have breakout seasons, much less that they're going to have breakout seasons in the same season as one another, and all of a sudden it's a Titans offensive revolution. You'll forgive me if I'm slightly skeptical about all of your dreams and fantasies. 615-737-1045. Last call for phone calls. We're going to play for you some audio from Albert Breer on DeAndre Hopkins. A little bit more information, some more context coming up next. We'll also get to the last call for phone calls and some polls. I'm Buck Rising. It's 104.5 The Zone. Man, Paramore was absolutely electric on Sunday. I've gotten a couple of DMs since we were talking about our trip to Bonnaroo this weekend. Skylar Lee tweets, my first Bonnaroo this year, incredible, and Paramore was amazing, even though I never listened to them. Well, one, sir, that's entirely your fault if you're just now listening to Paramore. Shame on you. But I'm glad that you came around.
I mean, in his defense, I can't say I grew up a giant Paramore fan. It was one of those things that I knew the hits. I knew the song, knew the one song from, what's the song they had on Rock Band? Oh, my God, it's going to kill me.
On Rock Band?
That's what you get when you let your heart win.
Yeah.
Yeah, as a kid playing that, I knew Paramore, but you got into it in the last couple of weeks. I was just listening to them in preparation for this show, and it got me so excited.
Oh, see, because I told you, that was the thing.
I know.
You were going for the Foo Fighters, right?
Well, the Revivalists are one of my favorite bands. But yes, the Foo Fighters, I know put on a good show because I've seen them before. So yes.
But by the time, and so I'm curious to get your perspective on this.
Paramore was my favorite experience of the day.
Did it? So you came away with Paramore okay.
1,000%. She was awesome.
Yeah. I have never been in that. I'm trying to think, because I don't go to a lot of concerts. So maybe that's why I was so blown away by her in particular, Haley, because of the power of that voice. I mean, just a human being that small, creating that big and powerful and captivating of a sound. I mean, the entire time she had me locked in. Like I said, Dave Grohl is a rock star, but so is Haley Williams, man. And the fact that they're local, the fact that it means that much to them to have been a band that started in Nashville and to be playing only their second Bonnaroo, she was speaking to that. I know the live stream was going up I think it was on YouTube TV, because I guess that concert was live streamed.
Either that or Hulu. But yeah, people were watching Bonnaroo all weekend.
Yeah. So anyway, we wanted to play for you this this audio of Albert Breer on NBC Sports Boston, kind of providing some additional details on what DeAndre Hopkins is looking for and how that factors in to his timeline at this point. This is Albert Breer.
The meetings went really well. He had one-on-one time with Bill.
How well could they have gone if he left?
Well, he had one-on-one time with Bill. I think he's intrigued by the idea of playing for Bill. I know he communicated with the Titans while he was on the visit. He's got a close relationship with Mike Vrabel. All indications are he's still intrigued by the idea of playing for Belichick. What this tells me that he wants to wait till the start of training camp is that he's still holding out hope that he's going to play for a contender, like a true contender, like a Buffalo or Kansas City. And the one thing you want to watch here, Kansas City's got almost no cap space. They're working on a long-term deal for Chris Jones, their star defensive tackle, to lower his cap number. If that happens, the door could open back up to him going to the Chiefs. So I think really what he's waiting for is something like that to materialize right now, because the money isn't great. It's not the Odell Beckham level, which was what he was looking for. And, absent the money, I think he does want to play for a true contender.
So apparently he's not in a place where he's seeing the kind of money that he wants. So he's defaulting to, all right, we'll see what else is out there. And if the money gets closer from a team that's better, perhaps I'll take my services to Kansas City.
So like we've been saying the whole time, don't expect anything substantial to happen before around training camp.
No, but do you remember what you said last week about the longer this goes, the further and further away you feel he is from doing a Chiefs or Bills deal?
Yes. Yeah, I did say that. Yeah.
Because I do think that nugget, the idea of the Chris Jones contract extension that's looming out there with a reduced cap hit that would allow them to make the kind of offer that DeAndre Hopkins might find more palatable, and of course on a far better team than the Patriots or the Titans.
So I guess the question would be, is he maybe more willing to take a little less to play for a contender than we think? We've had this blanket. He's going to go to the highest bidder no matter what, but is contention for a Super Bowl just that much more of an incentive?
Well, and it's I guess, what's the highest bidder, right? Because if the highest bidder is coming in further from 10 or further from 15 than we think it might be, and the money's still relatively low, are they creating a smaller gap for Kansas City to have to meet them? You know what I'm saying? Between Kansas City and New England or Kansas City and Tennessee, is the gap there smaller that allows Kansas City to come up Maybe not as much as they might have had to, but just slightly more to put him over the top. Those are the things to keep an eye on. Polls, please.
Stop the count! Stop the count! The polls have closed and the votes have been tallied. Now, here's your favorite Buck Rising Show correspondent, Lucas Polzika.
Presented by Two Rivers Ford, who sells below MSRP on any non-specialty new Ford. What in sports made you say, oh no, over the weekend? George says those Jacksonville Stadium renderings gaslighting Jags fans into thinking their team won't be playing in London by the end of this decade. Tim says Ricky Fowler's inevitable Sunday collapse in the U.S. Open.
Yeah, we didn't talk about golf, but Ricky Fowler, is Ricky Fowler one of the most perpetually disappointing golfers out there? Because I feel like Ricky does not achieve on the level that Ricky's name seems to carry him or has carried him for many, many years. He's a great golfer, don't get me wrong, but like Ricky doesn't win.
Yeah. The majors continue to escape him, yes. Wyndham Clark, though, who did win the U.S. Open, has a really cool story behind him I'd encourage anyone to check out. Will this Tennessee baseball season be a success if they do not win the national championship? 73% say yes.
Okay. Well, I mean, they did rebound from a place where nobody really thought they'd be competing this way in Omaha.
I mean, there's definitely got to be some middle ground between success and failure, because if Tennessee does end up bowing out of the College World Series, you still put it out in the outfield wall. Hey, the years you made the College World Series, 2023 is going to be up there, and you're not going to be 4 years from now sitting at a ball game and pointing to that year saying, oh, look at that 2023, what a failure that season was.
You might, but I will.
Which running back has the most leverage for a long-term deal? 42% say Saquon has the most. 29% say Tony Pollard. 19% say Josh Jacobs. Only 10% say Dalvin Cook.
We'll talk about that tomorrow with that running back conundrum, because those are four very unique instances, and they're all kind of in the same mess.
What is Stefan Diggs mad about? Puka says probably the new offensive coordinator, talking about Ken Dorsey.
Yeah, but Ken Dorsey, like I said, like Lucas said, he had a monster year, Stefan Diggs did. So those complaints being valid, there's less and less evidence to that.
Yosh says only 484 targets in the last 3 years.
Yeah,
that's what
tough.
he's mad about.
It really is hard to come up with a scenario where he'd be pissed about the way that he's being used in the offense. But like I have been told many times and experienced many times in my life, professional coaches, professional athletes, they don't always listen to reason.
Knox Villain says Stefan Diggs is mad because he can't, for the life of him, figure out the one thing that Meatloaf wouldn't do for love.
Aren't we all, at the end of the day?
I'm just glad you get that reference. Or do you?
I would do anything for love, but I won't do that.
Ah, good job.
I'm a music guy now.
Yeah, big festival head.
Honestly, though, like, not a big festival head, because you're right. I would never camp. Those people look miserable by the time we were walking through there on Sunday.
I wouldn't say miserable, but a little downtrodden.
Dead. Zombies. Well, I'm definitely going back. We're going to find a way to get the show there. It's going to be a great time. Thanks for taking me.
You're welcome. It was fun. Those are the polls.
That's the show. We'll do prime time tonight. Back at it with the radio show tomorrow morning at 10. Blaine and Mickey got you next.